Hello. This morning I'd like to take some time to share with you my thoughts and reactions following a meeting I had with the members of a small but effective group in Newcastle upon Tyne, just up the road from here. They're rather disturbed and disgruntled following rather unnerving developments which are threatening their very existence as a group. And it's led me to ask a fairly straightforward question, and that is the National Trust in fact for everyone? Now, those of you who don't know, the National Trust has a proud tradition in Britain of looking after and caring for historical properties, landscapes, and other objects and items which embody cultural history. They are the stewards of space and place for the nation. And it's a very admirable goal, actually. It's something which I was very pleased to get involved with when I worked for the National Trust. I actually used to work at a property called Holy Jesus Hospital in Newcastle upon Tyne, but we'll come back to that in a moment. The founding principles behind the National Trust were actually based on the concerns of three key people. Octavia Hill, let me just check, I've written down their names here, Hardwicke Rawnsley, and also Sir Robert Hunter. And these three people were social reformers, but each with a different key focus. The one that I want to share with you primarily today is Octavia Hill. She actually died 100 years ago last year. So in 1912 she passed away. But she spent her life working with a whole myriad of people from various strata in society. So poor, almost middle class, the middle class themselves. But the through thread there was to do with the quality of life that she could help people to attain. So whether it was housing, education, or just preserving green spaces, she was a key player at the time. In fact, there are parks in London that only exist today because Octavia Hill got involved, and these little green spaces, these sanctuaries in the city, are of priceless value to the people who use them today to escape from the hustle and bustle of London. Now, she was a social reformer working in a time of social reformers. One of her key principles, though, was to be firm but fair. She would expect her effort and her societal charity, as it were, or philanthropy, I suppose, to be paid on, as it were, to other people. So if you benefited from her efforts and her actions, you would also help other people, and therefore there was a ripple effect which sort of grew out of her efforts. Now, this is actually linked with another social reformer, or certainly someone who was making big ripples in society at the time, and that is Beatrix Potter. She, again, you may or may not know this, but she actually started purchasing pockets of land in the Lake District, trying to preserve them. You see, they were under threat from industry, development, open cast mining, this kind of thing, and she wanted to preserve the beauty of that landscape because farmers were just selling up. It was a very difficult time. And people said, you can't stand in the way of progress. You know, what are you doing, Miss Potter? And they would put an emphasis on Miss Potter, trying to put her in her place. But she wouldn't listen to this. She powered on and eventually became one of the biggest landowners in the area and bequeathed her estate, her portfolio, to this body, this National Trust body. And out of this little acorn, out of this small idea, a mighty oak grew. Indeed, the symbol of the National Trust is an oak leaves rather, and an acorn. So out of an acorn grows a mighty oak tree. And so this is a key principle and a concern of the people who were involved with the founding days and years of the National Trust. Small things making a big difference through association and expectation that they will be passed on and shared with others. Now, I mentioned that I used to work at a property called Holy Jesus Hospital, and Holy Jesus Hospital is a wonderful property, saved, once again, in part by the efforts of the National Trust. It's one of only two 17th century buildings in Newcastle which exist today, and it actually stands on the footings of an Augustinian friary, a medieval monks community. So it's a very interesting site in its own right. But it's also the base of operations for something called the Inner City Project. And it's the members of the project who have actually got in touch with me, the users of that project, and also past users of the project, because they're concerned at news that the Inner City Project is to be closed down. Now, the Inner City Project, as its name implies, works with people in inner city areas to help to give them a broader context for their lives. It helps people, usually young people, but also some older people as well, all age groups, to experience primarily the countryside. You get out of the inner city area, you see greenery, you understand the geographical, but also the social and historical context of your life. And you understand also that your blinkered view, this grey concrete view of a city, is limited, and it helps people to grow as individuals. Not only do they gain this broader outlook on life through activities such as camping, hiking, orienteering, biking, I believe, kayaking, jumping off waterfalls, but they also work together as a team. So they learn the benefits of engaging with society and people around them, and they become more confident through all this activity. Now, I've been told of two key case studies where people have come in as young teenagers who have been going down the wrong track in life. For example, walking the streets at night, perhaps, just looking to get drunk, hanging around with their friends, no real goals. And they come into the Inner City Project, or rather they came into the Inner City Project, and they were exposed to other children, other young people who had some similar backgrounds to them, but also had a zest for life, and they started to pick this up. They were reinforced positively by adults who cared about what they were doing in the Inner City Project. And out of the Inner City Project, out of their time over the years, they actually, based upon that experience, changed as people. One of these individuals actually went on to university and only got in actually on the merit of her experience with the Inner City Project, because her grades weren't good enough to get in. But she became a social worker. She graduated, became a social worker, and now works with other young people, and indeed wants to help them to experience similar experiences to what she experienced with the Inner City Project. The second case study is a very similar story. Again, went to university, but this experience changed her fundamentally. She wasn't going to go to university beforehand, and she's now a lawyer. She works pro bono with the Citizens Advice Bureau and offers people from, again, all spectrums of society good advice in their lives, changing lives, all because her life was changed because of the Inner City Project. So the Inner City Project is a small, focused endeavour, the thin end of a wedge. It is an acorn, but out of this acorn grows great things. But it's being closed by the National Trust. You'd think that the lesson of the acorn, the lesson of Beatrix Potter, the lesson of Octavia Hill would guide their thinking in all matters, but it doesn't seem that it does. You see, they closed the Inner City Project, and instead they're replacing it with things like, with nice projects. For example, 50 things to do before you're 11 3/4, which is very sweet and lovely. You want to know what they are, check out the link in the underbar below. But that won't change lives. That's simply saying we advocate childhood. Yes, it's not engaging with people. And one of Octavia Hill's key interests was the fact that simply looking after gutters and windows, looking after landscapes wasn't enough. You have to change lives. And once again, that's a founding principle of the National Trust. Now, one of the reasons why the Inner City Project is being closed, because there's no real good reason, is because apparently it's not focusing on the right people. The members, the users of the Inner City Project have been described as being out of fit. Now that's a very, very small conceptual jump from being unfit. And what they mean by this is that they are out of fit for the model, the business model, which the National Trust is trying to grow and indeed trying to aim at a target audience. In other words, they want people who are likely to be members or who are already members to be benefiting from the National Trust's endeavours. They want, for example, the Inner City Project, or wanted it to become a membership grooming organisation. And at one point they were told very explicitly, you're working with the wrong people. We want you to work with people in more affluent areas, such as Jesmond in Newcastle. But Jesmond doesn't need the work of the Inner City Project. Young people there, for the most part, and of course I'm generalising, have already got opportunities to be exposed to the landscape. They live in a relatively green area of Newcastle anyway, but they almost certainly have parents who are members of the National Trust. They probably go out and experience historic properties and landscapes already. They probably are lucky enough to have a holiday once a year. So this seems very strange, and it's certainly not charitable activity. Since when does charitable activity have to revolve around a business model, generating more business for your own interests? A charitable endeavour, almost by definition, has to be one which either breaks even or even makes a loss, but nonetheless changes lives, and once again echoes the values of Octavia Hill and the other founders of the National Trust. I suppose this all really comes comes to a point where you have to ask, what is the National Trust for? And indeed, does their motto, forever for everyone, actually stand up to scrutiny? Are they really for everyone? Are they preserving everything forever for everyone, when they're actually dismissing whole swathes of society and telling people, they're not worth our time, don't work with those people, they're not going to become members? There is an irony inherent here, and that is the two people I just mentioned went from being not of fit to being of fit. They are now professionals. They, no doubt, quite possibly are National Trust members, but almost certainly the National Trust would be quite happy to send them a leaflet saying, we have a beehive that needs your care. We receive such letters all the time here at Arkea Soup Towers, and I must admit they do get a little bit tiresome. We get them constantly, but that's because we are of fit. Having said that, we're not, if you go by our postcode. Arkea Soup Towers is not in a wealthy part of Newcastle. So this whole idea is completely flawed, sectioning off and siphoning off elements of society based upon a very narrow view of what the National Trust should be. Is this what the National Trust should be, though? I don't think so. Based upon the founding principles of the people behind the National Trust, but also as well just on what the National Trust seems to stand for in the broader world. It is an acorn which became an oak tree. It is an organisation which should be exciting. It should be run by people who have imagination, who have a glorious, magnificent vision for their role in society. But instead, they seem to be the Italian job, the self-preservation society, and we're only going to involve ourselves with middle-class or upper-class people. It's very narrow, very disappointing, and also very Victorian. Although ironically not, because in the Victorian era, people actually, like Octavia Hill, were making a difference. The National Trust doesn't seem to want to. So, to summarise, I am very frustrated at this. At Arkea Soup, we passionately believe in the power of history and landscape to inform people of who they are and how they came to be who they are, give people a context for life. And in this way, I was very proud of the Inner City Project when I worked at Holy Jesus Hospital. To hear that it's being closed down is a travesty, and I thought I'd share that with you. I also thought I'd ask the question, as I say, is the National Trust therefore for everyone? One of their guiding mottos is forever for everyone. But are they indeed for everyone? Now, the staff of the Inner City Project, unfortunately, aren't able to talk about what's happening. They're in consultation. So, in other words, there's a legal process which has to take place before their jobs are ended. And this process is a very convenient way for the National Trust to essentially gag them. So they aren't allowed to talk to me or to anyone else about what's happening. But clearly, they're not happy. I know I wouldn't be happy. Really, I'd just like to challenge you as the viewer to consider, what do you want from the National Trust? If you are a National Trust member, or if you donate to the National Trust, do you really just want them to be a self-preservation society, looking after buildings, gutters and windows, as Octavia Hill said? Or is that not enough, as she said? Does it need to be more than this? And if it isn't more than this, should the National Trust reconsider its status as a charity, or rather, or at the very least, reorientate and publicly redescribe what it is that they do as charitable endeavours? Don't pretend to be all for childhood by putting out 50 things which are just nice to do, and take away genuine opportunities which change lives and actually, National Trust, ironically, create members, future members of the National Trust. You'd think that this Acorn to Oak Tree organisation would have a long-term view, but they don't. And I just thought I'd challenge you to consider, well, what do I want from the National Trust? Do I want to continue giving them money? Am I annoyed about this? Is this a cynical, cold, unimaginative, inglorious way of behaving? It's certainly not what I expected from the National Trust. So with that, I'll say goodbye, and please share this video with as many people as you can. If you know anyone who is a National Trust member, share it with them. Let them know. Don't let this happen quietly. It's almost certainly going to happen, but don't let it go out with a whisper. This deserves a roar. And in the coming weeks, members of the Inner City Project will be getting involved in certain activities to make it clear that they're not happy, and I will be supporting them. So show your support by sharing this video. Until next time, bye-bye.